pumped to be at church this morning? Man, our band is so awesome. Bo and the team, they just crush it every single week. So can we make some noise for our band? They're awesome, and it is so good to see you guys today. If we haven't met before, my name is Cotter, and I'm the Next Steps pastor here at Bay Shore, and I'm so glad you guys made it out on our sunny day in March. It's like 70 degrees outside. There's no snow on the ground like there was last week. This is pretty amazing. We've also got a great crew joining us online this morning through Facebook, YouTube, and the podcast, and every week, people join us from different states, from different countries. I just want to give a huge shout out to James this morning, who's watching us from Brooklyn, New York. So can we give a big shout out to James and everybody in our online family? So this morning we are continuing our series called Parables that we started last week. And in this series, we're looking at some stories that Jesus shared with his disciples. And these are stories that he shared to teach spiritual lessons to them. And so last week we looked at a story about some workers in a vineyard. And today we're going to be talking about this guy that went on a trip. Now, how many of you guys have ever been on a family trip? Like a road trip. All right, now, for those, which is pretty much everybody, how many times have you been on a family trip where everything went according to plan? Nobody. That seems to be how family trips go, right? Now, I remember when I was in middle school, our family was taking this trip down to the Outer Banks, and I'd never been to the Outer Banks before. I have no clue why we were going down there. My parents said, hey, we're going to go to the beach for a week, and I was like, that's all the information I need. I was pumped. So that was when I was in middle school, and I was really excited about taking that trip down there. And so when you're going on a family trip, there's some key elements that you got to have, and the first one is the family minivan. How many of you guys know you got to have a family minivan if you were going on a family trip? And so we had ours. We had our 1990s Chevy Astro van. Look at that thing. Now, this is not like the exact one. I'm going to be honest. I found this on Google, and it's kind of creepy because it's in somebody else's driveway. You can see their bike. You can see the time the picture was taken, but that is like the exact van that we had. And this van was really unique because you couldn't roll down the windows in the back. You just kind of could like slide open this tiny part to get air. I guess our parents didn't trust us to roll the windows down, but that was our ride. That's what we were taking down to North Carolina. And you guys know how it is. When you're going on a long trip and you're a kid, you get super, super bored. And so my sister would fight that boredom. She's really smart and into like reading and stuff. And so she would just sit in the back and read a book the whole time. Well, my brother and I just like to play video games. So this was back before like the Nintendo Switch and phones on your games on your phone and all that. We didn't have any of that when we were kids. So what we had was a TV in the car. And I'm not talking about like one of the ones that slides down from the ceiling or one of those ones from Pimp My Ride that go in the back of like the head seats. I'm not talking about that. We got a picture of this thing. This is a 13-inch TV. Isn't that amazing? 13 inches. It even has a little spot for the VHS tape. This is about as good as it gets. There was no 4K on this. It was like 480p. That's about all that we could get on this thing. And so we had a little power converter, and so we'd plug this TV into the power converter. We would plug our PlayStation 2 into the power converter, and man, we were set for our whole trip. And so we were rocking this out on the way down there. We didn't need a 65-inch TV. We had 13 inches, and then you could throw your shoe under there and prop it up so you could actually see it. It was pretty amazing. So we're rolling down. Everything is going great on our trip. And just like all trips, things go great until they don't. And so we were playing PlayStation and everything was going good. And then the TV went out and the PlayStation went out. And I was kind of upset because nobody gave me a heads up to save the game first. And so the TV went out, the PlayStation went out, and so I was trying to figure out who was to blame for this kind of happening, and I was looking around a little frustrated, and then I looked to the front seat, and look, we're going 65 miles an hour down the road. There's like 3 lanes of traffic, and I see my dad going like this with the keys in the ignition while we're going 65. We had completely lost power in the van while we were driving down the highway. I did not even know that was possible. I had no clue that that was possible. And so we didn't have power steering. We didn't have brakes. We didn't have anything. It was just a really, really sketchy situation. We were rolling down. We didn't have any power in the van, and it was, the PlayStation not working was the least of our worries. And so, my dad's flying on the road. We're trying to figure out what to do, and thankfully, he was able to kind of get us out of that situation safely. We kind of pulled off. I don't know how he got us out of that, but there was an Arby's after we stopped, and so everything ended up being all right on that family trip. But how many of you guys know that the family trips kind of get a little sketchy? Like things just don't always go very well. And so in this parable that Jesus shared, this man was getting ready to go on a trip. And so we're going to be in Matthew chapter 25 today. That's where we're going to be hanging out. We'll have all of our verses up this morning, but another way that you can follow along, we got Bibles in the lobby. One of my favorite ways to follow along with the messages is the Bible app. And so that's a free app that you can get on your phone. And what I love about it is it'll send you a verse to your phone every single day, which is just a great way to start your day. So you can follow along in the Bible app, or we'll have all our verses on the screen this morning. So this is Matthew 25. We'll go ahead and put this up. We're going to start out in verse 14. So it says, "Again, it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey." So we got this guy who's just handing out bags of gold to his servants before going on a trip. That sounds pretty awesome, right? Like, that is the kind of guy that you want to be working for. And so he hands out different amounts. So the first guy, he gives 5 bags. To the next one, he gives 2. And finally, he gives 1 to the last one. And they're all given these bags. And then the guy goes on his trip. So we'll go into the next verse. It says, "The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money." So the 2 servants, the first 2, they took their money and put it to work. It says this guy with 5 bags, he went at once and put his money to work. And so they took what they were given. The man who was given 5, he went out and he made another 5. The guy who was given 2, he went out and he made 2 more. But then we got this third servant. And he kind of opted for a different approach. He took the one that he was given, and he was really afraid of losing it. And so he just went, dug a hole, and threw it in the ground so that it would be in a safe place. And he was so afraid of losing it that he just, was scared, and he just kind of put it somewhere safe so he wouldn't lose it. So let's hop back in with the next verse. It says, "After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. 'Master,' he said, 'you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more.' His master replied, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.' So the man went away for a super long time, and then he comes back, and the guy who was given 5 bags, who made 5 more, he was super excited to share that with the master. He's like, 'Hey, look, I was faithful with what you gave me. Like, look what I did with it while you were away.' And the master was excited. He said, 'Well done, good and faithful servant.' And then he promised to put him in charge of more things because he had been faithful with what he was given. And then the master, after talking to the man who brought back 10 bags, he moved to the guy who he gave 2 bags to. And that guy said the same thing. He said, 'Look, you gave me 2, now it's 4. Look at what I've done. I've been faithful with what you've given.' And the master responded the exact same way. He was excited. He was like, 'Wow, you've been so trustworthy with what you've given, so I'm going to give you more responsibility.' So now we get to the last servant. He was pretty excited with the first 2 guys. But now we get to the last guy who kind of buried what he was given. And when he saw his master, he just returned it to him, and he said, 'Hey, I was kind of afraid of you, and I was also kind of afraid of losing your bag of gold, and so I just dug a hole and buried it.' So let's see what the master responds. He says, his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy servant, not off to a good start. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest.'" So that's not really the response that the servant was expecting. He had returned what he was given. He didn't steal any of it. He didn't lose any of it. He just gave it all right back. But the master was so frustrated with him. He could not understand how he had just wasted all this time, not made anything, not even earned interest on it. And that laziness just infuriated the master. He could not understand what he'd done. And so he just took that bag of gold away from him. He's like, well, you didn't do anything with it, so I'm just going to take it. So he was just so disappointed in this wasted opportunity. The servant had a chance to grow it, had a chance to do something great, and he just totally wasted that opportunity. Now, this week, how many of you guys have iPhones? You got iPhones? Okay, that's cool. You guys are good people. On iPhones, they have this thing where they put up like memories of photos that you've taken every day, and that's one of my favorite things to do is kind of look at the random photos that they choose. They always pick different ones every day. And so one of the ones that popped up this week was really cool. We got it. We can toss it up on the screen. So this is Emily and I from like last summer, last spring, and we went to the alpaca farm over in Berlin. How many of you guys have been to the alpaca farm? Anybody? You all need to go there. It is amazing. They let you feed the alpacas. They let you pet all of them. They have llamas there too. The llamas are kind of not very friendly, but the alpacas are super cool, and so we just had a fun time. And so I love seeing this memory pop up the other day, but what you can't see in this photo is the real significant thing, and that's that this photo represents freedom, because this is a few months before our son was born. And so we were outside. We were in the sun. We were able to stay out past 6 o'clock that day. Those were just like amazing, amazing times. But our son Taj, he was born at the end of last summer. And ever since he came in the world, Emily and I have just been determined to do everything we can to make that dude happy. Like just anything we can to invest in him, to make him happy. And so we buy him clothes. We buy him a crazy, crazy amount of diapers. It's completely out of control. They're on my Walmart pickup order like every single week. And so we do that. We research what kind of foods he can eat safely. And last weekend, we put this tent up in the middle of our living room that he could crawl around in, and can't see our TV anymore, but we got a TV, or we got a tent in there, and he's happy. And guys, it is something crazy. My sister was kind of giving me some financial advice, and she's like financial wizard. I don't know anything. And so she said, hey, you should put some money in a 529 education account for him, and it'll grow, and then he can buy textbooks maybe when he gets to college one day if he's got enough money in there. And so we did it. We put some money in there, like 30 cents, and maybe it'll grow. Who knows? Look, I don't even know if I'm giving you guys the right numbers of that thing. I don't know what it is, but she told me to do it. And look, Emily and I will do anything we can to invest in that little guy because we love him. We want him to have a great future. We want him to have a great life. And look, that is what God wants for you. God wants you to have a great life. God wants you to have a great future, and because of that, he's invested in you. And that's the first lesson that we can take away from this story about this master and his servants. The master, he started out this story by investing in his servants. He gave each of them bags of gold, and he cared about them. He wanted them to be safe while he was gone. He wanted them to be taken care of. And God has given all of us gifts. And in the story, God is the master. The master represents God to us, and we are the servants, and God has invested in us. He's given each of us a bag of gold through our talents, through our abilities, through our skills, through what we're passionate about, through different opportunities that he presents us with. God has taken time to invest greatly in each one of us, and his investment in each of us is unique. And there's a really cool verse that talks about this in the Bible. This is Psalm 139, and we can put this up on the screen. I love these verses. They say, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Each of us was created by God and created intricately by God. He took time to create us. He was intentional and purposeful in how he made us. He gave you specific talents. He gave you specific passions and skills. He gives us specific opportunities, and he's done that for us uniquely. He's given each of us talents and gifts that other people don't have, and that's our bag of gold. That is how God has invested you, by creating you uniquely and giving you gifts and passions, giving you a lens to see life through that nobody else has. And because God loves you, he has invested in you and created you uniquely from everyone else. And I think about my mom. My mom is awesome. She's best mom, but she's so creative. Like, she is always constantly thinking of like new and fun things to do. And so she uses this gift that God has put in her life to bless like everyone around her, but especially right now, her grandkids. And so every day she's got new activities for them. She's building forts with them and tree houses, and she's got new games. And so she's taking what God has placed in her life, and she's taking full hold of it, and then she's using it every day to bless the people around her. And somebody else I think of is Paul, and not Bible Paul. Bible Paul's awesome. He wrote like half of the New Testament. He was gifted too, but I think of Bay Shore Paul. Bay Shore Paul is amazing. He comes here, and so you'll see him sometimes after the service helping you get connected. And Paul is an amazing accountant. Like, he is brilliant. And so he used God's gift that he gave him to be super smart about math and accounting, and he decided to open his own business. And so Paul is passionate about accounting, passionate about small businesses, and so he combined those two things with his passion for Jesus, and he started a small group where he meets with other small business owners here in the area every week, and they just talk about how they can make Jesus a priority in their business. And look, I don't have the same talents that my mom has, not even close. I don't have that creativity. I'm terrible at math. I did so bad in Nate's game this morning, like so bad. And so, like, I don't have those talents. I could never do what they do, but I think that is so awesome. I think it's so awesome that we all are different and we all have gifts and skills in different areas, different things that we are passionate about. And God's desire for your life is that you'll make the most of the gifts and the passions that he's placed in you, to make the most of those passions and the most of those skills. And something that really stands out to me in this parable is the way that the master responded to the servant with 5 bags and also the servant with 2 bags. So we can put this up on the screen. So first we'll read this one on the left. This is verse 21. This is the master's response when he came back and the guy had 5 bags and he had turned it into 10. And so he says, his master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness." All right, so that's the response of the guy with 5. Now let's read the one on the right side. This is the response of the guy with 2 bags. His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." See anything different? No, those are the exact same response, word for word. And look, here's what's wild to me about this. The one guy came back, and he had 10 bags of gold. The other guy came back, and look, he doubled what he'd been given too. He had 4 bags now. But the one guy had more than twice as much gold as the other guy, and the master responded the exact same to both of them. And here's what I think we can learn from this. God's desire is that you make the most of what you have been given, that you make the most of what he has placed in you. Each of us are responsible for making the most of what God's placed in us, our talents, our passions, our skills. And the master in this parable, he did not expect the servant with 2 bags to come back with 10. He just expected him to be faithful with what he was given. And when we see the master be frustrated with the guy that only had 1 bag, it wasn't that he didn't have 2 or that he didn't have 4 or 10. His frustration with him is that he wasted what he was given. He was given an investment, a bag of gold, which sounds pretty awesome, and he just dug a hole and buried it. He didn't do anything with what he was given. And look, God's desire for us is that we'll be faithful with what he's placed in our lives. He wants us to be responsible for what he's given us. We don't need to come back with the same amount of bags of gold as the people around us. We just need to make the most of what God has placed in our lives. And making the most of how God has created us and making the most of what he's given us starts with figuring out how he's created us, what he's placed in our bag. We need to think about it. You know, what has God placed in your life? What are the things that give you energy? What are the things that you are passionate about? What are the things that you are skilled in? And how can you use those things to bless other people? And another thing that I think God does is he places opportunities In our lives, we have skills, we have passions, we also have opportunities. We have different people that we can meet. We have different people we can talk to. And so what opportunities has God placed in your life? I think about different stages of life that we can go through. And look, if you're single, think about all the time you have right now to invest in the people around you, in yourself, in your friends, in your relationship with Jesus, in your career. If you're married and you don't have kids, man, think about all the time that you have to invest in your spouse, to bless them, to really improve your relationship. If you do have kids, think about the future when you'll finally get to sleep again, But no, seriously, you got kids, man, think about all that time you have to shape them and to bless them and to teach them about Jesus, to encourage them and to really care about the things that they are interested in. And maybe you're in a different stage of life. Maybe you're retired. If you're retired, think about the time and energy that you have to invest in your family, the time and energy you have to invest in your community. We had a Bay Shore group here for years, and they called themselves the Baby Boomers, which is an amazing name. And so it was led by Bill and Jill Hicks. They were awesome, and the people in that group were mostly retired. And so what they did is they used their time to meet together. They would pray. They would read the Bible, and then they would use their other time to help out at a local food pantry, and they would help give out food to people in need. And I thought that was just an amazing use of the stage that they were in their life. And your passions, your talents, your opportunities, those things are in your life for a reason. And the servant in this parable who took what he was given and just hid it away out of fear, he took for granted what he had. He wasted his opportunity. He could have done something great, but instead he missed out. And look, I think back to my life, and I've had different stages in my life. I had many years where I was single. I had a few years, about 7 years now, where Emily and I have been married. We've had like 7 months of being parents. And in each of those stages of life, I have had varying amounts of energy and time and resources. And when I was single, I had more time than I knew what to do with. And so I could use my time to invest in my friends. I was able to go to a soup kitchen every Saturday, and I played football with kids that were there. And I had time to go to a bunch of Bible studies. And it was just an amazing time for me to focus on myself, get myself right, and focus on the people that were around me and really invest in them. And then, I think about when Emily and I were married before we had Taj, before he came along, and we just had so much time to invest in our relationship and get our marriage really solid. We had time to further our careers. We both furthered our education. We got invested in our careers, and we both, learned a lot of lessons about how to be selfless with each other, which was, very helpful when Taj came along. Very thankful for that. And look, the last few months we've been parents. It's like a very small amount of time, very inexperienced in that. But, it's just been an amazing time for investing in our son, for investing in our family as like a family unit. And in each of those stages, there were things that I had, and then there were also other things that I didn't have. When I was single and when we first got married, we had literally zero money. Like, if gas was as expensive as it is right now, I would have just been sitting at home all day. So we had times where we just didn't have a whole lot, and now that we're a little bit older and we've got a son, we don't have a whole lot of energy or a whole lot of time. And when I get older, I want to look back on my life, and I want to be able to say that no matter what stage I was in, each stage that God had me in, I want to say that I was able to make the most of that stage, that I was able to make the most of those opportunities that God placed in my life. When Taj is growing up and hopefully moving out of the house one day, I want to be able to say that I'm proud of the time that I spent with him. I want to be proud of the investment that I put in him with my energy and my time and my care. And when Emily and I are older, I want to be able to look back at our time together and see all the memories that I made. I want to be able to say that no matter what stage of life we were in, no matter how little money or time or energy or whatever that we had, I want to be able to say that we invested in each other, that we made memories, that we invested in our marriage. I want to be able to look back at every stage in my life and say that I made Jesus a priority in my life. Look, our opportunities in life, they are always changing. They are always evolving, and there will be things that we have. There will also be things that we don't have, but whatever we do have, that's what God has chosen to place in our bag for that stage. And our responsibility is to make the most of that, to make the most of what he's placed in our lives, not to dig a hole and bury it and let it waste away, not to sit around and think about all the things we wish we had, all the things we wish were a part of this stage of life. No, our responsibility is to give 100% effort to whatever God has placed in our life at that moment. So what are you going to do with what God has placed in your life? How are you going to make the most of your talents and your giftings and your skills? How are you going to invest in your career? And how are you going to invest in your health and your fitness? What are you doing to improve your relationship with your friends? If you have a family, what are you doing to make the most of that blessing? How are you caring for your spouse? How are you making sure that they know that they are your priority and that relationship is a priority to you? What are you doing to be selfless for them? What are you doing to encourage them? What are you doing to make their life better? And if you have kids, how are you investing in them? How are you training them up to love others? How are you training them up to be a hard worker and to love Jesus? How are you spending your time connecting with them about their passions, their desires? If you're retired, what are you doing to make an impact on your community and on your family? What skills and resources do you have right now that you can use to bless other people? And most of all, for all of us, no matter what stage we're in, what are we doing to invest in our relationship with Jesus? You know, if you haven't made that decision to live for Jesus, today can be that day. There's no better day than today. But if you are living for Jesus, how are you growing your relationship with the Lord? You know, how are you taking time to pray, taking time to read the Bible each day? Those are things that help us so much because we can learn more about who God is and how much he cares about us. And I remember when I was growing up, we had always been going to church. That was always a priority in our family. But there was like a moment where it seemed like things kind of changed for my parents. Like there's this time where they just started taking their relationship with Jesus more seriously. And so my dad went away for this like weekend men's retreat with our church. And then when he came home, it was like every opportunity he had, he was praying with us. So like we'd pray before dinner. We'd pray before we went to like our sports practices. We would pray before we start the day, literally like all the time. And it wasn't just like hey, Jesus, bless our food and help the Eagles to win, which is not a terrible prayer, but that's what it was beforehand, you know, but it wasn't like that anymore. You know, he was praying about specific things. He was thanking God for things. He was praying about things going on in his life and our family's lives and in our lives as kids. And what my dad was doing with that was he was investing in his relationship with Jesus. And the other thing that he was doing is that he was investing in our family. You know, he was showing us the value of prayer, the importance of his relationship with Jesus. And look, there's something cool about explaining something. There's value in explaining things to people, but man, there's power when we model things for others. There is power when we show it with our actions. And so my dad could have come home and say, hey guys, prayer's great, but here's a real quick prayer and let's go ahead and eat our dinner. No, he modeled it for us. And he did it all the time. And he showed us that it was a priority to him with his actions. And look, making an investment in your family, making an investment in your friends, in your relationship with Jesus, it can be something simple. It can start with something simple. It can be as simple as praying with the people that you love. It can be as simple as telling your spouse that you love them and that they are the most important person in the whole world to you. It can be as simple as talking to your friends and saying, hey, what's going on in your life? How can I encourage you? It can be as simple as putting your phone down, turning the TV off, hopping down on the floor, and playing with your kids. Like this parable, it's not calling us to do everything, but it is calling us to make the most of what God has placed in our bag. And we can all invest in our family. We can all invest in our friends. We can all invest in our relationship with Jesus. And so let's toss that verse from Psalm 139 back up on the screen. So it says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Look, God cares so much about you that he took time to specifically make you a unique way. And we need to make the most of everything that God has placed in our life. Every opportunity, every passion, every talent, we need to make the most of what God's placed in our lives. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for how you care about us. You are so big and so great, and yet you still care so much about each and every one of us. And I'm so thankful for that, God. And I pray that you would help us to be able to really clearly understand how you've gifted us and how you've gifted us uniquely and how we can bless the people around us with the gifts and opportunities that you've placed in our lives. I pray that we would make an effort to make the most of everything that's in our bag right now. Not to worry about what we don't have, but to be focused on what you have given us and use that to bless the people around us and to invest in our relationship with you. I pray this in your name. Amen.